Everyone, welcome to the beginning of our Easter series about Jesus. And we are looking forward to Easter coming up in just a few weeks. Years ago, when I was in college, I made a journey while in college to a place called Daytona Beach, Florida during spring break. And let's just say that when you put tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of college kids from around the world or around the country into the same place on the same beach with unrestricted access to drugs and alcohol and very limited clothing, things get a little bit inappropriate, so you should say. We would do this thing called Daniel in the Lion's Den. We would walk into hotel rooms uninvited. We'd walk into giant parties uninvited because the doors were just open for the whole week. We would stand up on a chair and we would get everybody's attention. Be like, hey, everybody, listen up. If you guys are trying to have a good time, hoping to fill some empty void in your soul, how's that working for you? That's what we'd say. Stand up in a chair just like that. Usually some drunk guy would say, it's going great. I'd then say, or we'd say, if you really want to understand why you feel so empty and what you can do about it, we'd love to talk for a while. And that's all we'd say. We'd sit down on the chair while everybody stared. Eventually, they'd get bored of staring, go back to what they were doing before. We'd be sitting on the side of the bed or in the middle of the dance floor. And then something would happen every single time. One person, one by one, people would slowly start wandering over to us. There would just be two or three of us, and these other people, they would start to tell us their stories. They were clearly looking for something and searching for something and knew that what they were pursuing wasn't working at all. We would talk to them about Jesus, and in those moments, we would watch Jesus rescue them from their current destructive paths as God immediately began to lift them out of the quicksand of their life and set them back on a solid rock and a solid path. We'd connect them with a group of Christians back at the campus or college that they came from. Well, I want you to think about that idea of being in a giant crowd, just standing up and just yelling out something. Our text today is preceded by a week-long religious festival called the Festival of Tabernacles. The Festival of Tabernacles was this interesting Jewish festival that would take place in Jerusalem where people from all over Israel made this pilgrimage to the city, to the temple, and they're having this giant party for a week. It's a week-long party, all day, just a giant party. Now, it wasn't like a Daytona Beach party. This was a different kind of party. This was a family event filled with faith and history and remembering of God's great provision and great food. It's also likely that the Festival of Tabernacles was the birthday of Jesus. That actually has nothing to do with the sermon today, but I just thought you'd like to know that. Jesus was understood by the majority of scholars to have been born during the Festival of Tabernacles, which is in the September, October part of our calendar. And that just adds some interesting color to the moment where there's a big party happening and it happens to be Jesus' birthday. Now, during this event, people keep gathering around Jesus. They keep gathering around to listen to him teach. In John chapter 17, the Bible says, midway through the festival, Jesus went up to the temple and began to teach. The people were surprised when they heard him. How does he know so much when he hasn't been trained? They asked. Now, during the festival, priests would perform these really interesting daily rituals where water was poured out onto the altar in the temple. Now, because we don't have a lot of ceremonial rituals, it's hard to really put yourself in the spot, but recognize that these festivals were built around all of these rituals and all these traditions that each meant something really important. And at this festival, this ritual was connected to praying to God for rain. They were asking God to provide rain during the agricultural year, during the year that would take place. The ceremony worked something like this. There was a priest, and he would have a procession of people. Lots of people would be around him. And he would walk from the city down to the pool of Siloam. And this is the same pool that replenished the city with water when they were being sieged by outsiders. It would keep them alive during these times of war. This is the same pool of water that was used for ritual purification. It's also the same pool of water where Jesus healed a blind man, the pool of Siloam. So the people go down to the sacred pool, and the priest filled this solid gold pitcher, a pitcher made of solid gold, and he would reach down into the pool, and he would come up with the water. And there was a sacred moment, a sacred cup, and the sacred water. And at this point, things start going crazy. A joyful procession begins to happen. They have the water. They're really excited. The people are shouting. They're going into the temple through a special gate called the Water Gate, into the city through a special gate called the Water Gate. And this is a big deal. The people are now all part of the profession. If you were a kid, you wanted to be part. If you were an adult, you wanted to be part. Everybody wanted to be part. They would start singing from Isaiah, "With joy shall you draw water out of the wells of salvation." At this point, the trumpets would kick in. People would start playing trumpets, and people would start dancing, and the shofar horns, which is like a long ram's horn that they would turn into a trumpet of sorts. And they arrive at the temple in this giant party that they're having, this giant dancing that they're having. The closest thing I think we have to it is like a modern marching band that's awesome, right? Just imagine that idea. So they would arrive at the temple. The water would then be poured out as an offering to God. And it symbolized them praying to God to send rain for the season. Literally praying for rain, for God's life-giving provision, the water of life. There was even a hope during the festival of Sukkot, which is, it's the Hebrew for the festival of tabernacles, that the Messiah would come. This is the case because of a prophecy in Zechariah that connects this festival to something about the Messiah. It says, "On that day, life-giving waters will flow out from Jerusalem." Keep in mind all these water connections. We know that there is a prophetic and messianic connection to this festival. It was a big deal, and it was celebrated in the most elaborate of ways. There was an ancient writer that went to this celebration, that went to this festival. And after he went to the celebration, he wrote this: "He who has not seen the rejoicing at the place of water drawing has never seen rejoicing in his life." So he thought it was the most rejoicing place on the earth. Lights would be lit, music was blasting, dancing and rejoicing all over the place. It was a real festival. And on the very last day of the festival, amid all the celebrations, amid all the hope for deliverance, amid all the prayers and prayers for water, Jesus stands up in front of the whole crowd, thousands, tens of thousands of people. He gets the attention of as many people as he can. And on the last day, at the climax of the festival, Jesus stood and shouted to the crowds, "Anyone who is thirsty may come to me. Anyone who believes in me may come and drink, for the scriptures declare rivers of living water will flow from his heart." What's happening here is Jesus is making sure they understand all this water stuff you're thinking about and doing, it really is all about me. So Jesus is calling to the masses, if you want to fill the emptiness in your heart, the void that's there, the hunger and thirst that you have for a legitimate relationship with God, he tells everybody there, if that's what you want, I'm right here. I'm your long-awaited Messiah. You ask for deliverance, I'm the deliverer. Come and drink. He was taking this historic event that they all loved, and he took all the prayers of all the years and all the hopes that people had had, and he says to the people, in this moment, your day of deliverance starts now. I'm the real water of life that you have been waiting for your whole life and had no idea about. every year at this Festival of Tabernacles, which is also called the Festival of Lights. So many names for one thing. For 7 days each year, as the Jews would celebrate, it reminded them of the 40 years that they had wandered in the wilderness before God brought them into the Promised Land, and how God was with them in their wanderings in the wilderness. And He was the pillar of cloud which turned into fire at night. In Numbers, it says, on the day the tabernacle was set up, the cloud covered it. But from evening until morning, the cloud over the tabernacle looked like a pillar of fire. It was very different, this festival, from all of the other feasts. The first was that for 7 days, the entire nation would leave their houses and go camping. They would move outdoors into temporary shelters made of branches and leaves to remind themselves of the hardships that their ancestors had undergone while living in tents during the 40 years in the wilderness. It was a ritual, a tradition, a ceremony, a religious connection, a spiritual connection that our ancestors went through this, and we need to never forget this. The second was that on the opening night of the celebration, a couple of giant menorahs or giant candelabras were erected. Each was reported to be at least 75 feet tall, with huge bowls at the top. Each bowl had 10 gallons of oil. And then with great pomp and ceremony, the bowls were lit. And it was why it was sometimes called the Festival of Lights. At the end of the feast, the lights would then purposely be put out. The reason that the lights were put out was because the Messiah had not yet come. Pay attention to all these connections. As they are finishing up the festival, Jesus is in public teaching in the temple area. And he continues talking to the crowd. He's already said he is the water. In verse 12 of chapter 8, Jesus spoke to the people once more and said, I am the light of the world. If you follow me, you won't have to walk in darkness, because you will have the light that leads to life. Here Jesus is standing in front of the crowd. I am the light of the world. You don't have to put that fire out this year if you don't want to. It's not an accident that Jesus refers to himself as the light of the world. He is challenging the entire nation. In this one statement, he is saying so much more. He is saying, I am the pillar of fire that led you in the desert. I am the very reason the festival is happening. I am the light of the world. I was the light in your past. I am the light in your present, and I will be your light in the future. He's saying, believe in me, believe in Jesus, and you won't need to walk in darkness anymore. These are really significant statements. And as we run up to Easter, all this matters. All this is really important. What does the light do, though? Why is he the light? Well, when you are confused, he will illuminate your path like a headlight. When you are lost, he will be your beacon like a lighthouse. Maybe you've heard this story about the captain while on maneuvers. There was a battleship that looked out, and it was in the night. He saw a light in the dark, foggy night, and after noting the light's coordinates, the captain recognized his ship was on a collision course with the other vessel. The captain instructed, signal the ship, we're on a collision course. Advise you change your course 20 degrees. The return signal countered, advisable you change your course 20 degrees. The captain signaled, I'm a captain, change your course 20 degrees. The response was, I'm a seaman second class, you better change your course 20 degrees. By this time, the captain was furious. His signal defiantly ordered, I'm a battleship, change your course 20 degrees. The reply said, I'm a lighthouse, you make the call. The idea here is Jesus is the lighthouse. And no matter how big of a battleship you think you are, Jesus doesn't move. We do. If you want light to illuminate your path, Jesus is the light to illuminate your path. Another thing that light does is that when you are wounded, the light will help expose the problem so you can be healed. The light exposes our blind spots, not to embarrass you, not to shame you, but so you can address the problem. After all, think about what you would like to happen if you were walking down the street and you had toilet paper on the bottom of your shoe. You would want somebody to let you know. Not to embarrass you, but so you could address the problem. This is what the light does. Jesus said, I am the light of the world. The whole world. Not just for the Jews, not just for the region, but the whole world. Which means that no matter today who you are or where you are from, no matter what you've done or how far you've roamed, Jesus is saying, I want to be your light. You don't have to walk in darkness, he says. You don't have to walk in darkness. The whole world is in spiritual darkness, if you hadn't noticed. If you thought to yourself, what is wrong with everyone? Everyone's walking in spiritual darkness. The prince of this age, the illegitimate ruler of this world, Satan, has blinded people. And the light of the world declares you no longer have to walk in darkness. So if you've been out there in life wandering, trying to figure it out unsuccessfully, realizing and coming to terms with the fact that this world is full of darkness and that you're part of it, Jesus is reaching out to you, calling you home. He's saying, you don't have to walk in darkness anymore. I can be your light. In November, December, I traveled to several countries in Africa on a mission. I was in Kenya, I was in Ethiopia, I was in Comoros. From the time we left Boston to the time we got back, it had been 10 days, and in those 10 days, I had been on 12 different planes. We spent as much time in the planes as we did on the ground. That's not fun, friends. That's not fun. In Africa, it's a long way away. It's not Rhode Island. It's a long way away. We traveled in taxis. We traveled in Land Rovers. We traveled in tuk-tuks. 15 people, 15 overweight American people crammed into a 7-person van. I kept track. We were in 40 different vehicles on our little trip. 40 different vehicles on our little trip in this little tiny trip. And I'm going to tell you, I got jet lagged. I was exhausted, bouncing from one time zone to another time zone to another time zone. Near the end of the trip, I woke up in a hotel bed, and it was pitch dark. I had no idea where I was. Because sometimes I had been sleeping in a bed, sometimes I'd been sleeping on a plane, sometimes in a car. I was so confused about what was going on. And it was pitch dark when I sat up in bed. I had no idea where I was. I sat on the edge of my bed and couldn't figure it out. I figured out I'm not at home. Where am I? Finally, I got to a light, and as soon as the lights went on, I knew exactly where I was. But it took the light. You see, when I was in darkness, I was just guessing. I was disoriented, but the light came on and it brought clarity to where I was. I was in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. It took me all 10 days to figure out how to say that. Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. When Jesus declares that he is the light, he is promising that in him, our eyes will be open. That in him, we will see the truth because he illuminates it for us. He says again, I am the light of the world. If you follow me, you won't have to walk in darkness because you will have the light that leads to life. Away from death and towards life. It leads you. You don't lead it. You don't come with your ground rules for how to follow Jesus. You drop it all and follow Jesus. Like the pillar of fire that led the people in the wilderness, Jesus leads us. We don't lead Jesus. Many people have a way of turning this good news into complicated news. Many people specialize in the message of guilt and sin and shame. But the light that is Jesus, it doesn't overlook our wrongs and the sins of our life, but he offers us hope to walk out of that darkness and into the light. He doesn't condemn us, he sets us free. That's the point. Jesus sets captives free. Lots of people love pointing out everything that is wrong, but not doing absolutely anything to provide hope or any solutions. True light doesn't just point out darkness, it provides escape from the darkness. That's the point. Jesus is the light of the whole world. You don't have to live in darkness any longer. I was on a leadership training once, and in this exercise, they called us together at midnight, and we were broken up into groups of 10 people. We were then dropped off deep in the Michigan wilderness on the side of a road. We were also given a set of rules and one compass, one flashlight, 8 blindfolds, and one set of coordinates. 8 of the 10 people had to be blindfolded. Only one got the flashlight and the compass. And the other person that wasn't blindfolded got the coordinates but wasn't allowed to talk. We then had to hike several miles through the forest, not on trails, but just through the forest, using the compass and the flashlight and the coordinates, trying to get everybody safely to the location. As the worship team comes up, fortunately, I had the flashlight. Whew. It was a little easier for me. What we had everybody do was everybody held hands for hours as I had the flashlight, and I carefully called out every root, rock, incline, decline, hole, tree branch as we very slowly made our way. While the poor person that was muted did a lot of large arm waving to make sure that I saw things that they didn't think I saw. We eventually arrived safely and had a great memory. But only a couple of other groups made it as well. Turns out some were lost. They actually got lost in the wilderness and had to be tracked down. Others couldn't figure out how to communicate with each other and just walk back to the road. Another group somehow managed to lose the batteries to their flashlight and couldn't find them. That light's important. If you're lost today, walking in darkness, Jesus wants you to know that He's the light. And if you believe in Him, He will be your light. If you've been found by Jesus, then you come alongside those who are still in darkness and help them find the way. Call it out for them so they know. Not everybody's going to be interested, but there are always some that will be. Jesus said, "Anyone who is thirsty may come to me. Anyone who believes in me may come and drink." And if you've been real thirsty for something real, Jesus is the real thing. And He said, "I am the light of the world. If you follow me, you won't have to walk in darkness because you have the light that leads to life." And if you've been floundering around in a cloud of darkness, Jesus is the light, and He wants to lead you to life. Would you stand with me as we close? Friends, today, if you are at the beginning of your spiritual journey, you're exploring, you're trying to find out what's going on, as so many of you have been, listen to the words of Jesus. Explore the words of Jesus. Watch as He calls you to Himself. Watch as He invites you to let Him be the water in your life and the light for your life. Today, if that's something that you would like Him to be in your life, it's okay to ask Him to be that. It's okay to invite Jesus to be your light, to fill you up. Just respond to Jesus. The altars are open every Sunday, and as the worship team leads us, you can come and ask Jesus to be your light. You can come ask Him to fill you up. But if there's something else that you really need to talk to Jesus about today, come on up and spend some time talking to Jesus.